It's been the big story for much of the week. The presidency saying Cyril Ramaphosa looks forward to trade talks between the US and South Africa, delivering enhanced prosperity for both countries. The presidency, in a statement, says Ramaphosa and his delegation have concluded a successful working visit to the US at the invitation of Donald Trump. It says that visit focused on addressing issues that have been a source of diplomatic tensions in recent months and reframing bilateral economic and trade relations. Ramaphosa has welcomed the expected commencement of trade talks with the US through their respective negotiating teams. Now, the White House is facing increasing pressure to explain its unsubstantiated claims of genocide in South Africa. Earlier this week, Donald Trump held a sometimes awkward meeting with Cyril Ramaphosa at the Oval Office. At some stage, Trump paraded news article clippings, which he suggested were used to propagate mass killings of white farmers in South Africa. Well, at least he, in fact, used these to suggest that there are mass killings of these white farmers. But it's since emerged that at least one of those images was actually from the war in the DRC. The debacle is being described as a PR nightmare and has also raised questions in some quarters around what actually constitutes a genocide. Let's speak about this with Professor John Stremlau. He's with the International Relations Department at Wits University and joins us now live. Prof, lovely to see you. Thanks as always for making time to speak to us. We'll speak in a bit more detail about what the legal test for a genocide is, but I just have to get, as a start, your initial thoughts around the increasing amount of information that's emerging, making it clear that, you know, what Donald Trump was saying in that office may not have been entirely true.
Well, rarely does anything come forth from his mouth that is true, but that's an aside. I just want to express my condolences to Ma Shobe and her family. She was a remarkable woman, and I think that your previous piece segues nicely into this discussion about genocide, and I won't be too academic, but I do think it's an important distinction to draw between the accusations of plausible genocide that the superb team assembled to the World Court from South Africa that made the case that there was plausible genocide in Gaza. It was done by legal processes, and it was done deliberately and deliberatively. And I think it was a good example of how you deal with questions of genocide now. On the contrary, Donald Trump is throwing words around with no at all sense of reality, and his ignorance is breathtaking. And I don't see how the American people elected him, but he was duly elected. And that's the risk of democracy, that you get a clown like Donald Trump, who is probably competing with James Buchanan as the worst president in the history of the United States. Buchanan was the previous to Lincoln in the Civil War, pre-Civil War period. And I don't want to be unfair to him, but he is generally regarded by historians as the worst president. And I think that that historians will look upon Donald Trump in the same way.
Yeah, but there are real dangers to this, right? Because genocide isn't a term that should just be loosely thrown around. I mean, we can see
That's right.
the devastating impact of a genocide taking place. And for the life of me, I can't really reconcile how an individual like Donald Trump can sit in a place like the Oval Office and throw the term around without there really being any kind of consequence for something like that.
Well, I wish that we had a Cyril Ramaphosa as president of the United States. He's a constitutional lawyer, and he's deliberative, and he's well-informed, and he's well-read. And none of that you can say about Donald Trump. Now, there is an unholy alliance going on in the United States between the Republican old guard, who are concerned about the increasing diversity and inclusion And we suffer in the United States from an inequity problem, but not as severe as South Africa's. But the two countries are very struggling for the same kind of transition. Majority rule here protected the minorities. A country that belongs to all who live here, united in this diversity. America is struggling to overcome its constitutional limits, which was basically the colonies are considered equal, and smaller colonies are as big as as considered in the Senate as similar to New York and California, and they are pushing for state capture by a minority as the country becomes more majority minority, and that's a hard reality, a political reality in the heart of the United States. Donald Trump is a special case, an extremist. And maybe he will vaccinate American democracy against a demagogue like him, who it distorts the realities of genocide. He's a liar, and he's a deceiver, and he's a crook, and so I can't say enough bad things about him. But he is duly elected.
He is indeed. I know you said you don't want to be too academic, Prof, but I think it's worth taking us back to what the legal definition of a genocide is, at least as envisioned by the United Nations Genocide Convention.
Well, I don't have the definition in front of me, but I think that it's important to stress the process by which genocide is determined.
Sure.
We are in a grand transition from a sovereign rights-based international order to a human rights-based international order. The Declaration of Human Rights was only a declaration in 1948. And that was a broad consensus of the world as it was known then, diverse in its complexion, but all were most of them were lawyers, and they go after the facts, and the facts build trust, and the trust builds faith in the outcome of the realities, and by due process, it's very, very important. Due process makes mistakes sometimes, and sometimes courts are overruled, but by subsequent realities. But slavery was once legal in the United States. But that they learn and due process. What the fact is that Nelson Mandela was a lawyer, a trained lawyer, even though he was arrested under an illegal system, and yet he understood that no man is above the law, and Donald Trump wants to be above the law.
Absolutely, and I suppose that process is important, but I just want to hold on to the wording of this convention, and fair point, Prof, I might have caught you off guard there, but there's a point I'm trying to make. The definition, according to the Genocide Convention, reads as follows: it's the intentional destruction of a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group in whole or in part with a specific intent to destroying that group. And again...
Thank you.
Fair enough. I was never going to have that top of mind either. I had to look it up very quickly. But once you hold on to those words, again, it becomes a whole lot more bizarre, and we could use stronger terms, that this word is being thrown around in the United States, especially if you live in South Africa and you know there is no intentional destruction of an ethnic or racial group.
America is a complex society, as is South Africa, and Donald Trump has never been supported by a majority of the American people. They did did get a legitimate plurality. It was a very close election between, and this harkens back to your previous comment. I mean, a lot of guys voted for Donald Trump because they couldn't bring themselves to vote for a woman. And Kamala Harris was clearly a better candidate than Donald Trump was. And I say that not as a partisan, but just as an objective observer. I am a partisan in the Democratic Party, and I do belong to the ANC here. So, but the old ANC, and it's a struggle. All politics are a struggle, but we've got to have the rule of law, and so therefore your definition of genocide is a place to begin. And Donald Trump has run roughshod over the definition. He just destroys it, and he tries to destroy it, but I don't think. And Cyril Ramaphosa was extremely disciplined in that terrible press conference that they contrived. I didn't think that they would do another Zelensky, but it's a one-trick pony for Donald Trump, and so he did try to do it, but he didn't get away with it because Cyril was smart enough to turn to Stenhausen and others and the government of national unity, and so it was a brilliant performance by our president, and that was then, and Trump. I'm embarrassed because of my accent to claim Donald Trump as a member of our Constitution. He doesn't believe in the Constitution. He doesn't read it, probably.
Sure. As they say, what a time. Professor John Stremlau, thanks for your reflections. Do appreciate it. And hopefully we all make it through whatever is actually taking place. I think few people can really describe it. Professor John Stremlau is with the International Relations Department at Wits University. Once again, Prof, thanks very much indeed.